Well, for more, we're joined by Ferdinand Fichtner from the German Institute for Economic Research, or DIW. It's good to have you with us. And it's quite amazing when we look at the success story of Germany's Mittelstand, those smaller and medium-sized companies. How do you explain the success?
I think the crucial point was mentioned in the film, that it's not so much about the price competitiveness, it's more about quality and a strong specialization on a very specific field of the industry, on very specific machines, for example. And this is what helps the German Mittelstand, the German export industry in general probably, to benefit from this still very good situation in emerging economies, for example, in China, where most of our exports by now go.
Now, you've mentioned it already, exports, obviously, the other major engine for the success story of the German economy, Europe's biggest economy still, despite the Eurozone debt crisis. And that's largely due to the successful export business. In the last quarter, it's doubled to 2.5% from 1.2% in the first 3 months of the year. But recent business climate survey speaks another language. Business confidence has actually been going down steadily over the past months. So how long do you think before the crisis will hit us too?
I think we should actually prepare for this situation. Now we should expect that in the second half of this year, in the second half of 2012, the crisis will affect the German economy. We are seeing it already in new orders coming in from abroad, for example, that our order situation is simply not as good as it used to be in the previous months. And this will affect the German economy at least for the second half of 2012. If we're lucky, then with the beginning of 2013, the economies in the emerging countries could speed up a little, because they are doing basically everything in terms of political means. They are doing everything in order to encourage growth in China, for example. And that could help growth in our economy, in Germany as well, because it will feed in our exports.
So you mean the companies here, they should really now focus on emerging economies? That's the only way out of the crisis for them?
I think that's one point, to focus on emerging economies, because I think it's quite clear that demand from euro area countries will remain weak over the foreseeable future. And so that would be one lesson. And the other lesson would be not to shed labor in the second half of 2012, not to put people on the street just in order to compensate for this weak developments of demand in the second half of 2012, but rather use a reduction of working hours, for example, in order to compensate.
Of course, if you put people on the street, they won't buy anything, they won't consume, and consumer confidence actually has started to weaken. How big a problem is that?
It has weakened, but given that the labor market situation remains fairly stable, which it actually looks that it remains fairly stable, then I think consumer demand in Germany and domestic demand in general should be a solid source of growth over the coming years, and therefore should also be a partial compensation for the weakness of demand from emerging economies.
Okay, all in all, doesn't sound all too bad then when you say it. Ferdinand Fichtner, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.